Right, yeah, hello. We're from Richfords. I'm Tom, and I've got Lucas with me, my colleague.
Hello.
First, I'll start with a little bit of an introduction to the business, who we are. Richfords was established in 1977 by Stephen Richford in Cornwall, which is, if you want to know where that is, really, it's a little bit pointing out at the bottom of the UK, the land of the pasty. And they say that if you see a hole in the ground, the Cornishman is bound to be somewhere nearby. What we do, as a company, Richfords specialise in damage limitation and restoration. We restore after fires, floods, and a variety of other incidents affecting private and public and commercial properties. And that's a bit about us.
Short and sweet.
Yes, short and sweet. Why we use iForms. I joined Richfords a year ago, just over a year ago. The business has been expanding quite rapidly in the last year or so, and the IT systems were struggling to keep up. There were old systems, and at the time the idea was to develop the back office software as a web app and to provide a bespoke Android application for our technicians to use. At the time, they were mainly using paper and telephone to convey information back to the office. We chose, the team that I joined was a team of one, Lucas, and we would develop this in-house. Right, missing the way. Our motives were to remove the paper trail, to get away from an existing system that was unreliable. As it turned out, it was costing too much time and effort for the two of us to develop a web app and support and develop our back office systems. We needed an alternative, something that would allow a rapid deployment and development procedure. When we found iForms, it did not take long for us to make the decision to use it. We could see it was flexible, allowed us to have a data flow through an API, and it also offers good support and continued development and improvement of the platform. That's why we chose it. Short, the API. So why did we start with iForms? Our development in the beginning was somewhat organic. We had ideas, but we needed to learn both form building and using the API. Our ideas were, first of all, to use the API and create and update option lists. Then we were going to move to use them to collect submitted form data. Generally, the basic tasks that I think everybody using the API will probably want to do. But before that, we needed to generate the access token. Thankfully, the iForm Builder website gives a good specification for it on the site, which is fairly easy to follow. And in addition, a search for JWT on the site will bring up some community shared examples. We are developing our interface in Java, and there's conveniently a community provided library for this that's linked to on the website. I found this a good way to learn by example, and if memory serves, it uses the Apache libraries for the base 64 encoding. this can be done in native Java, and I decided to rewrite my own class using native Java. I missed that bit of the slide. How that one. Right. Yep. Our first project was to develop a simple timesheet collecting app, or form rather. With the tokens taken care of, we were able to produce our option lists, and what we wanted was a list of stuff to be updated as new stuff right into our system, and to be able to segment that into categories and departments. This allowed that we had have a static list for the departments and a dynamic list that we update through the API for the staff. The second need was for a list of the projects that are current in the business. This would allow the staff to associate their timesheets with the various projects that they're attending. This has to be updated regularly. Part of this is when new work comes in, we have to update it, and also when the diary is finalised at the end of one day, we can update a category on the timesheets which covers an easy-to-find way of all the projects that are due a visit the following day. We also had a fairly static big list of activities of what people would do when they visit these projects. Collection and validation and the integration with our own data was the next step to tackle with the API. I'm not a very good JavaScript programmer, so much of the validation actually takes place once we collect the data, which we actually pull at periodic times from the iForms through the API. The validation mostly goes right, and it throws out emails to our admin staff to query when we've got issues with timesheets. Just finding my place again, sorry. That was our first project. After that, our next step, really, the effort was to implement a framework to make developing through the API a lot smoother and a lot faster. Developing forms is quite rapid through iForms, but integrating with the API, you need a I would say you need a framework in order to develop at an equally rapid pace. And we want to, as well, when we started, the API 6 hadn't arrived. And just before we started getting it to grips and understanding the API 6 came out, and we took that as the opportunity. We'll use that as our target rather than the API 5. Right. After developing the framework, I think we are now at a stage where we are going to be pretty capable of deploying new forms fairly rapidly and support the data flow through the iForms API using our framework. What we want to do and what we're doing now, we are creating pre-filled forms for the with data that can be looked at altered, responded to, and put directly back into our database to be used as a resource. We are creating several lookup tables as and when required from our database, and we can keep them up to date without having a member of staff go in there and laboriously update them. And we are collecting data through submission. We are both doing it through servlets now, and we are pulling it at periodic timescales. And soon we're hoping to implement a request service where we'll collect data, populate a form on demand, and we'll use an iForm form for the requests, and hopefully have the whole system automated. And we're going to do, in the future, more populated forms, more option lists, and more data collection. Ultimately, less paper, less phone calls, and less repeat entering of information. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, Tom, thank you, and thank you, Lucas, for going through that. And just a quick question for you. Was it because iForm Builder offered API that you went with iForm Builder as a solution, or was it just after the fact that you noticed that it had it?
It was a very big part of the decision, actually. When we discovered that there was an API, it was very interesting to us because a lot of other solutions offer cloud-based data storage and so on, and we rely on our databases. So yes, it was very important, yeah.
Great. And then if you had to give advice to someone who's considering to use the API, or they've just started, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I'm a great believer in trying it out, experimenting and learning through using a system. I believe that the support through iForms, I've received support through the help desk, and it's been very helpful, very good, very on the ball, and so don't worry about asking questions. I use the online chat facility on the iForm site, and yeah, just go for it, and read some of the documentation and pick up the bits which you think you will need, and progress, and you'll find that the more you know about the API, the more useful and the more uses you can come up with of using it.
Great, and I'm just going to ask you one more question here, and that's really about the API itself. Now that you've configured this workflow, how often do you actually manually go into the iForm Builder platform?
At the moment, we haven't got form assignment set up with our code. That's kind of the stage that we're coming on. Really, it's only to go in to do that, and maybe when we need to add or edit users.
So it's very limited on that sense. Everything else is automated except for that part?
Yeah, the idea is to get as much of it as we can automated, so that the admin staff in our office have got then just a familiar interface to look at the information, use the information with.
Well, I really appreciate your presentation today, and I'm sure everyone else on the call does as well. So thank you very much to both you and Lucas, and since it's getting later for you guys, I don't want to keep you up too long, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted. Goodbye. Bye.
All right, so the next presenter that we have is Mark Shepherd-Smith, and he's from the Seymour White Group.